citizens. Amen.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. We do appreciate all the board members that are here with us tonight. I think Mr. Huggins is not the only one that's not with us. We appreciate Karen and all the hard work she does to make these meetings possible, and even afterwards, and all the hard work. And we do appreciate having Jennifer, the attorney, with us tonight. Mr. Dykes is on vacation, I guess.
No, he had a conflict, another
Yeah,
hearing.
He's on vacation. Do we have any announcements that needs to be made? Did you have any information? You don't have anything for us? At this time, we ask that each and every person that planned to speak before this board tonight, that you will stand and raise your right hand and swear that the testimony, if you plan to speak before this board, please stand. Raise your right hand. Jennifer, if you would.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you will give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
First item on the agenda tonight, what is it?
Get your microphone where you're speaking and you can pick up on the camera.
First item on the agenda tonight is a Bowron Variance. Before we get started, is every one of these here will be heard, or do we have some contingencies? Okay, who's speaking for the county? Mr. Matthew, is Stephen? Stephen, tell us which one's going to be continued.
Yes, sir. Item number 2 is a request to continue to the August 27th, 2020 ZBA meeting. That is variance number 20-000009. It is a pole barn that was placed too close to the rear setback. This was continued from the last meeting. We're giving the applicant one more time to put some effort into joining this conversation.
Motion to continue to the August 27th meeting.
Motion to continue.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Second, the second one, which one now?
The second RV.
Go ahead.
Yes, sir. This is a conditional use for an RV. Again, this is being requested to the continue to the August 27th, 2020 ZBA meeting.
Motion to continue.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
How about the others? The rest of them we're going to hear?
Proceed as normal. Yes, sir.
Not very many people in the parking lot. I just wondered if we was going to hear them all. I guess the first item would be the Hubbard Variance request. Who's here to present this? Mr. Stephen? We do that at the end. Who's here on the next variance request?
Apex Disaster
Hang on,
Specialist.
hang on. Is he on Zoom?
Hello, hello.
Yes, sir.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I am Chris Rutherford. I am here on behalf of the Hubbards that are the owners of the property at 76 Potts Avenue, requesting a dimensional variance on the back property setback. We're requesting this dimensional variance based on 2 factors. One of those being a personal use hardship. The Hubbards are getting older in age and have physical ailments, and are requesting to install a elevator shaft on the back side of the house. I believe y'all have a copy of the survey. The house was built in 1996, creating some difficulties with being able to install a chair lift that would be able to rise stairwells going up. And structurally, we're not able to get an elevator shaft internally in the house because we wouldn't be able to drive the piles and get the concrete structure underneath and inside the house, basically, to speak of. We've also got a physical hardship, which is the south side of the property. Again, looking at the survey, there is a utility easement that runs down that side of the property, preventing us from using the full use of the property. Which left us
Can I
one
interrupt
option.
just a second, please?
Sure.
Are we supposed to be able to see the gentleman that's speaking, or?
Say that again?
I'm just asking a question. He doesn't have a webcam? Did he state his name for the record?
Yes, my name is Chris Rutherford with Apex Disaster Specialist.
Okay, I was hoping that we could see you on the webcam. Just make sure we didn't have a technical area, but go ahead.
Yeah, I've actually got a video camera on the computer that I'm on, and the Hubbards are also present this evening, would like to actually speak also, but once we get completed through what I'd like to say.
Okay.
So we're not able to use a chairlift on the inside of the house, which would be standard issue to be able to convert an older home for accessibility to the second and the third floor of the house, due to limitations of the size of the stairwells. And again, we can't put the elevator shaft internally in the house due to structural and engineering components not allowing that accessibility. We've got a utility easement that runs down the south side of the property, again, limiting the use of the property, requiring us to move to that back area. We would be requesting basically 33 square feet for the elevator shaft, which is 5'6" by 6 foot, to encroach that 15-foot easement on the back side of the property. You may note the red bar that was destroyed in the fire. This property is located directly behind that and was heavily impacted due to this fire, which has allowed the Hubbards to do some upgrades to the house to allow it to be more ADA compliant for their use of the property. They're doing things like installing showers without thresholds to be able to get into, not tubs. They're also adding in a fire suppression system in the house with a threat of fire, of course, what they've been through on the red bar fire. And they're also enlarging all of the doorways internally inside of the house to help with accessibility. The request for the variance, again, is for the elevator shaft only on the back side of the property. I believe also the Hubbards, if they can raise their hand, I believe they have a button at the bottom, they can raise their hand. They may want to also speak for themselves.
The red bar, this property is directly to the south of the red bar? I mean, the north?
That is correct. Yes, sir.
So are you asking for the variance to be next to the red bar?
Can you still hear me? Yeah, no, sir, it's not directly between. It would actually be the backyard of 76 Hotch would be on the east side of the property.
Everyone understand what they're asking for? They're asking for a variance on the back, reduced just for the stair, not all the way across, just a variance. How big did you say that stairwell's gonna be?
It's actually an elevator shaft, and the elevator shaft will be 5'6" by 6 foot. It's about as compact as we can get one, still enable an elevator to install internally.
So basically, you asking for roughly a 6 by 7 variance and a 15-foot rear setback. You're not asking for all the way across, right?
That is correct. Yes, sir.
Only for this elevator shaft.
That is correct. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Is the owners of the property here, Mr. Herbert? Are they here?
Yes, can y'all hear us?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, you can, great. Well, my name's Jim Hubbard. My wife is Annabelle. We've owned, this house for about 10 years. We had
Pardon?
fire damage from
One
the
second,
red
pl-
bar.
1 second, please.
I should swear them in, since they weren't here to raise their hands.
We need you to be sworn in, please. We didn't swear in the other guy either, did we?
Yeah, I guess we didn't, unless he was already on.
Chris,
Yes, sir.
are you still with us?
Yes,
I'm
sir.
still-
ma'am.
We need to swear y'all into the meeting tonight, so the attorney, Jennifer, will do the swearing in. You want to do it one at a time, or how do you want to do this?
I can do it all at once. If the Hubbards and Chris would please raise your right hands. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Go ahead, Mr. Hubbard.
Oh, hey, yeah, we've had the house for 8 years, and, we got fire damage from the red bar, and that was about 1.5 years ago, and so we're trying to, get the house to where we can, use it. I'm 68, my wife is 65, we're having some mobility problems and some breathing problems, and really for that reason, we kind of want to use, the house, longer than we would without the elevator. The bedrooms are on the second floor, so to get up on the second floor, I can see it's gonna be an issue as we get older. And that's really the motivation to do this. And, the fire was just an opportunity to, get things, the way we really need them. It's more of a need than a want.
How many stories is the house?
Three stories with a small cupola on the top of the third floor.
But the elevator will go all the way up to the third floor, is that correct?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Any questions from the board members for the owners or Chris?
I have a couple of questions. Was this home on a rental program prior to the fire?
Yes, sir. Sure was.
Is this home going to be on a rental program after the remodel?
Yes, sir, that's the plan.
Does having an elevator make it more rentable?
Oh, I don't know. I'm 68. I'm gonna retire in the next year or two, and when that happens, then we'll try to move. But, we're living in Baton Rouge, Louisiana right now. And, you know, the two houses across the street have elevators, the house next door and the one on the other side has elevators. So I think it would be, helpful for us.
What's the advantage to this location on the inside of the floor plan? Is there a hallway that abuts this on all 3 floors?
I believe I can answer that probably better, Mr. Hubbard. Actually, it requires the least amount of structural changing to the residence. As you know, it being 3 stories, each wall carries a load down through the house. So the third floor sits on the second floor and so forth. Where we're locating this gives it the best access to the house with the least amount of structural change, hopefully to limit the financial burden for the Hubbards of installing it. And it is also the largest area of easement or usage that we could actually find to be able to put it in.
Well, I'm wondering why it wasn't located on the front porch.
Because that would not give accessibility to the inside of the house without structural changes. We actually did attempt to put it on the south side through that porch area, but it was literally going to require structural changes all the way from the ground up, again, creating almost I won't say impossibility, but the financial part of it would be huge to change the structure under the house on the first floor to be able to bring that all the way up through the second and the third floor, giving access to each floor.
Is there a ramp designed to access the first floor?
Yes, sir, there will be. There is not now. There is only one set of steps in the front, but that is part of our task that we will be installing during the process of the rebuild.
Will you need a variance for the ramp?
No, sir, we will not.
If you would, come up and address that for us. State your name, please.
Yes, sir. Stephen Schoen, Plan Development Services. Staff has determined that the definition or the code required hardship, if you will, has not been satisfied. I do have to indicate that the received survey from this afternoon, that we just received the image in front of you, does show that easement on the, I guess, the east side or the south portion of the lot itself.
Outside.
Not that,
Hang on.
yes, sir.
This item you speaking
Yes,
of?
that is the item.
Jennifer, this is reference boundary survey that was presented to us today. How we gonna identify this? Boundary survey, exhibit, this is a county exhibit? Exhibit 1? How we gonna identify it? I don't see a surveyor's name on it. It's been cut off.
Down bottom.
It's by Ron Velker. I can tell by the,
Lord have mercy.
So, there has been some new information, both in that image and in the testimony of Chris. The application didn't reflect some of the interior difficulties for placement of the elevator shaft internally, nor the attempt to achieve a stair rail movement type system. Again, and still, a hardship is by code supposed to be based on the land itself and the code constraints that may or may not apply. As much as I feel for the applicant, health and financial gain or loss is not part of that hardship. That is staff's finding.
The ramp that was mentioned by Mr. Chick will that require a variance?
It's not proposed in anything that I have. There is an encroachment allowance for stairs and ramps and other things. So if it is built outside of that or is proposed outside of that allowance, then a variance would be required.
What is the allowance?
only 18 inches
Well,
in height,
the eave
isn't
is 18 inches. I want to say it's 3 feet. I'm just
And width?
3 feet into the encroachment, or it's allowed into the encroachment up to 3 feet from the property line, maybe? That may only be for the HVAC systems. It's a little fuzzy, I apologize. I can certainly find that answer for you if you need it right now.
Well, Chris, are you with us?
Yes, sir.
Were you told that you had to have a variance for the ramp? Or do you understand that you meet within the code without asking for a variance?
That is correct. We are going to be able to get the ramp installed within the code, without having to have a variance for the ramp. That is correct.
So you're good without a variance for the ramp? Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else? You good?
That was it, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Enter the staff report.
Stephen, we got to enter the staff report as,
Yes, thank you for
under
reminding me.
Exhibit 2, right?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Anyone here in the audience would like to speak in regards to this variance? Anyone here that has any comments in regards to this variance before us? Chris, you get the last word.
I just would like to say that on behalf of the Hubbards and their personal use of the property, I know at this moment, it may be brought to the attention of the board that, yes, it was on the rental program before the house was burnt. And yes, it will likely go on afterwards. However, the homeowners do have anticipation of use of the house, which is the idea behind the elevator shaft. Insurance is not covering this modification to the house. This is something they are doing personally out of their own pocket. So it will be a financial burden not a gain to them. I know that there was a comment made about possible financial gain through rental. I don't think the Hubbards is concerned with that as they are with their personal enjoyment of the property.
How many days a year do they anticipate using the house? Mr. Hubbard? Mr. Hubbard? Chris?
Can you hear me?
I can now.
Oh, great. Well, we're planning on using the house. I'm 68. I guess I'll die when I'm 83, so that's about 15 years.
No, I'm asking you, how many days out of the year do you occupy that house? Now.
Well, the house has been burned, so we haven't been able to use it for the last year and a half. When I retire, I'm going to move there and get a Florida residency. But that'll probably be about 2 years away.
If the house was livable today, how many days out of the year do you come down to stay in the house?
If it were usable today?
Yes, sir.
Oh, we'd probably use it, probably 2 months a year.
State,
I'm still.
state for the record what type of health issues that you have.
Well, I'm pretty good. My wife has had back surgery and has mobility problems, and she also has pulmonary problems. She doesn't have any pulmonary reserve. If she gets a cold, she can't sleep laying down. She has to sleep sitting up for like a month every time she gets a cold. So she's got breathing problems. She's got mobility problems, and the elevator, I can see, is going to be essential if we're going to be using the house because the bedrooms are on the second floor.
So it's your testimony tonight that she cannot walk up and down the stairwell. Is that without difficulty? Is that true?
That's correct. In fact, she's sitting here with difficulty, you know.
I wish y'all was here so we could see. Chris,
Now, I wish I would, if I could get a video.
Chris, you get the final word. Anything you'd like to add?
No, sir, I do not have anything else to add.
Thank you, sir. Motion closed. Do you have a question for them?
No, not for them.
You have a question for the county?
Yes.
For the county?
Yes.
Stephen?
Do these lots qualify for the old setbacks in Grayton Beach?
What are the old setbacks in
Well,
Grayton Beach?
I was under the impression that lots in Grayton Beach of a certain age were eligible for reduced setbacks from the pre-1975 setbacks.
But I will defer to Mr. Carpenter if he can come up.
You're referring to a provision in the Land Development Code
State your name.
for
State-
non-conforming lots as defined by the 1975 subdivision regulations. If the lot was created prior to May of 1975, the effective date of those, and it was less than 10,000 square feet at the time, and it hasn't changed since then, it would qualify for 5-foot side setbacks as a non-conforming lot compared to the 1975 subdivision regulations.
State your name for the record, Mac.
Matt Carpenter, Carpenter, for the Planning Department.
Okay, so the front and rear setbacks would still be 15 and 20?
I think that would be the standard county setback.
So this house actually has a 10-foot front setback to the porch.
And I don't know that I can speak to
I'm wondering if that,
three of that.
all right, so there's no benefit to them using using the old 5-foot setbacks, it doesn't
I
appear.
don't think so. In our new code, the current code, you can encroach up to 3 feet into the 7.5-foot side setback for certain things like mechanical equipment, your air conditioning equipment, a hot water heater that hangs on the outside of the building, and steps that are less than 30 feet tall.
30 inches?
30 inches, yeah, not 30 feet.
And did the county say that they were in favor of this or against it?
I don't think we took a position on this particular one. Typically, if the request is for some kind of handicap assistance, we would support that. In this case, it's an elevator that's being suggested as necessary for the owners of the house as opposed to possibly the occupants most of the year. But we wouldn't be opposed to it.
Thank you. Motion to close the public discussion. Thank you, Stephen. Second.
Second.
Motion to approve it.
I make a motion to approve the variance as requested over strictly the limits of the elevator shaft as depicted on Exhibit 1. And in the event the house is ever demolished, then the variance is null and void, and the standard setbacks would apply.
Second.
Second.
Discussion. Ms. Waterman? You see him on that side. Do you have any discussion? Burgess?
I made the motion.
Charlie?
I think he's got a hardship with the medical thing.
Skip Jeff. I don't want to hear from you. Go ahead, Jeff.
Well, I don't think it's going to be a very attractive solution, and I'm quite certain that there are other ways to include that elevator within the allowable footprint of the structure. And this path of least resistance, and I think that the project, there are other solutions, but I can't say that they don't have a need, and I haven't reviewed it in enough detail to verify that there is a better solution, so.
We don't have anybody complaining. Nobody's here to voice opposition. I think Red Bar, if they, I think that's one of the people, problem, they would show up, they didn't, and, feel like that.
The houses next door didn't voice any opposition, so.
No opposition. How about you? We have a motion to approve. Karen, did you get that motion? We have a motion and a second to approve it as presented with the stipulation that if it's ever destroyed and the house destroyed, that it go away. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Chris. Chris. Mr. Hubbard. Chris.
Yes, sir.
You received your variance. We appreciate y'all presenting it. You should have the verification hopefully within 30 days.
Thank you very much, Board. I certainly appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Next item, you need to take a break, Jeff? Good. Number 5 is our next one. One of the Village of White Cliffs. Who's here to represent the Village of White Cliff? What happened? That's a different law firm. Okay. Let's wait till Jeff gets back. We better wait till Jeff gets back. I just thought we'd get you up, get you started.
Appreciate that, sir.
All right. You did what?
and make the rules as we go along. But if they're gonna be talking, it would make sense that they try to have a video.
Mr. Carpenter, I like to have a discussion with this. When when we're dealing with and I think Hayward made some comment to this about the Zoom, about the swearing in. He said that it's best if they're here, but if they're not here, we understand that. But speaking with Jennifer, shouldn't they be visible? Shouldn't there be a policy that if they're not visible, then we're not going to hear the case?
I think at the BCC, the policy has been if we're not able to see you and identify you, then you can't be sworn in and you can offer comments, but not testimony.
Well, in the case where we just heard, then we were not hearing. You said they have to be visible, right? Not present.
That is what Sydney has said. So I think the basis for the determination could be the information provided in the package.
Pardon me?
The information provided with the staff report.
Yeah, I don't think their testimony affected the outcome of the variance for the elevator shaft. Agree? I don't feel their testimony affected the outcome of us.
I agree with that, but I think, do you think this board need to make a motion that if they're not visible where we can see they sworn in, then we will not hear the case? Does that need to be in the form of a motion? Jennifer? You have a problem with that?
I don't know. Our attorney is here. We could consult him.
She was here. I swear I don't understand.
You can see him.
Oh, is that who he is?
Yeah.
I did not know who that is. I swear I did. I thought he worked for the property appraiser. What was the guy's name that worked for the property appraiser that retired? What was his name?
Waiting for Sydney while she's out on maternity leave. This is Mr. Steve Hall.
Mr. Hall. Oh, he's the other guy that filled in. This is a conspiracy.
Mr. Chairman, good afternoon.
Nice to see you, Mr. Hall. I'm glad I finally realized who you was. I thought you was other people. Help me to understand this. What's your opinion on our discussion as far as the board making a motion that they have to be visible for this board to see, to be sworn and give testimony?
Mr. Chairman, the public forums across the state of Florida have gone from everything to requiring people to show their driver's license on the screen at the time that they're being individually sworn, to what we did tonight, which was just to accept an audio representation that they are who they are. I think it's a moderate and good conservative position to require them to appear by video where possible, if they are going to present testimony. The only issue I'd be concerned about in relation to tonight's meeting is that we did not provide notice to potential attendees to the meeting ahead of time that would be a requirement, so that they could make an informed decision. I certainly think that it'd be a reasonable policy for the board going forward, beginning at your next meeting, that be a policy that they have to be either in attendance or have the ability to appear by video and be sworn live at the meeting prior to presenting testimony.
Very good. You agree?
Yeah, yes, I was gonna say it shouldn't affect anybody else tonight because we've already allowed the first one to go, but.
We appreciate that, Jennifer. Thank you, Mr. Hall. I would like to have a motion from the board that to people to participate on the Zoom, that I personally would think that the driver license presentation needs to be done, because I think there's issues that come before us that gets pretty heated in discussion. And I think that, pardon me?
Talking to the microphone.
And I think we need to get the identification so we know, because I know that things will happen that could end up into the appeal process that would cost us a case. So I would like to have a motion made if the board agrees to participate at this meeting, you have to present a picture ID and a video live stream to participate in the swearing in and testimony.
I make a motion that moving forward with our meetings, live video participation and identification be presented and included.
Second. Discussion. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
You said aye?
Oh, I was going to say, can I say something?
Sure.
So the only concern with requiring them to have identification on Zoom is if you're not requiring the people in person to present identification, then you're requiring more strict standards for Zoom. I just wanted to point that out
I
as this.
understand that, but I think that for someone to come here and give testimony for this board, raise their right hand, and they're here.
Talking to the microphone.
I'm talking to the attorney.
Okay.
They're here in person, and we can somewhat identify, like Mr. Hayward, that, you know, they are who they are. When
Understood.
you have somebody that, you know, if they even, especially if you can't see them, and if they present and they disappear, we don't know who they are. So I think that they can give up the right not to be asked for identification when they, on Zoom, because we, you know, the whole purpose of this is to make sure whatever testimony they give, the person who they are, that will stand up in court either for them or against them, ever how the issue may fall. I think there's two different issues, but I think we need to separate that to protect the Zoom.
Understood. Just wanted to say that.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Now then, state your name for the record.
Robert Kaufman, attorney with Dunlap and Shipman. I'm here with Melissa Ward, planning consultant, and Beth Tyler, property owner. We're here on a variance request on behalf of Beth and Alex Tyler. This is a variance, a setback variance request, two setback variances. This is within the Village of White Cliffs community that I believe the board's very familiar with. Specifically, the request is for a variance to conform to the White Cliffs HOA community guidelines that have been in effect since the 90s. It's a 15-foot front variance, front setback from the county standard 20, so a 5-foot variance. And then in the rear, that's for the main structure. And then in the rear, the request is for a 4-foot rear setback, which is for the garage structure, which is specifically allowed within the White Cliffs covenants. And again, I believe the board's familiar with the history of the White Cliffs development. The county's interpretation was that the community setbacks would be allowed to be the applicable setbacks until Mr. Dice made a new determination, I believe, in the mid-aughts. Since that time, the property owners seeking to build have requested variances from this board to build equal to the community setbacks. And to be clear up front, what's being requested tonight is in conformance with the community setbacks. It would not entail any sort of variance from the community setbacks, only a variance from the county setbacks.
You're not trying to sneak something in on us?
Despite the mask, no, sir.
Just like a mask?
No, despite the mask, in spite of. It would be a good time to try to do that.
Hang on there, Rob. And I really do appreciate the fact that I do believe this is the recorded document, OR book and page of the Village of White Cliff, which spells out what you're requesting.
Yes, sir.
You have attached this to our package tonight, right?
Yes, sir. Beginning on page 18 of the staff report.
And this is something, hang on a second, this is something that the board, that we do on a regular basis, that the variances that he's asking for is be the same as in the covenant and restrictions that is reported in the OR book and page 3074, page 2834. I think it's pretty simple, black and white. Melissa, don't you think this is pretty simple, black and white on y'all's behalf, that we do this on a regular basis, and it's your testimony, you're not trying to sneak something in on us, right?
Melissa Ward for Dunlap and Shipman. Didn't know I was going to testify. We are not slipping anything past you. As a typical situation, you're well aware, the county used to accept architectural review board
I just want your
letters.
testimony.
And that, I know you do. They used to allow architectural review board letters. They don't do that anymore because the county only has purview over their code. While the association, in my opinion, should ask for just a blanket variance, they haven't. And so each individual owner comes and you guys repeat this process.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. You sit down.
I have a quick question.
You have a question?
I do. I noticed you applied the street setback to both the front and the side street on this house, and I'm under the impression that Florida statute only requires that the front setback be applied to one building facade, not the side street. So I'm wondering if it's possible for them to have a 12-foot setback on the long side. Correct.
Well, one, the owner is here to discuss I would say at least verbally agree to comfortable with before she started her building plan. And if you're aware that I don't know that they require them to 15 feet. You want me to get her to answer that question?
Let me ask Jeff something. If it's in accordance with the recorded covenant and restrictions, what they're asking is just to comply with the covenants and restrictions. Does it really matter?
No, sir.
Are you asking whether or not this is about the right of
No.
the setback?
No, I'm trying to gain them as much space as possible, but if they don't need it, application of the front setback to two facades.
I believe you're correct. By statute, they could treat that as a side setback and would not have to do the 15. I believe the architect who designed the site plan, his interpretation was that because of the corner lot, I believe, which I don't know if that is correct or not, but it would also have to be a 15-foot on the side. So that's how it's been designed currently.
Mr. Stephen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stephen Schoen, Planning Development Services. Again, staff has determined, despite the long and sordid history of this village of White Cliffs, there is in fact not a hardship present on this site as it relates to the code.
I gotta say something, Stephen.
Yes, sir.
Just the fact that, used to they would build those houses and didn't have any issues, then it was the interpretation of Mr. Davis, I think, that they have to come and ask for this board. So it's not the hardship because that the county has imposed greater restrictions and would not accept them. Is that not a hardship? I mean, if this is something that we've been doing now for several years, I don't understand the county position not saying that they agree with it.
Well, the county's position is not opposing the development or what's proposed. The county's position is simply that there is not a hardship present as the code requires.
But okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. Anyone from the audience that has anything to say at this time? Robert, you want to come up? Real brief now.
And it will be on the hardship issue. I would just say that at this point, if the variance were to be denied, it would essentially be forcing inconsistent development with what's been approved by the county over the past 20 years. So we believe that in of itself would be the hardship. There's some other elements as well, but I think that's the heart of it.
Anything else?
Sure, thank you.
Motion to close the public discussion.
Is there anybody from you? Does he want this?
Motion to close it to public discussion. Second.
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Motion. Motion to approve as presented.
Make a motion to approve as presented.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? Waterman? We're gonna get a second or a motion out of you before the night. You have any discussion? Mr. Burgess?
No, sir, I made the motion.
I think that the hardship would be consistent with what he had said about the,
Yeah, anything?
Yeah, I think it's important that this is on the record that as far as White Cliffs is concerned, that it's a matter of process and not anything that we're considering as a hardship variance.
Mr. Henderson? We have a motion second, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
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 Opposed? There's no way this board can just take in on the White Cliff just to resolve this, to
If we had made a motion to approve all future variances, as long as they conform to the code and are approved by their town architect and HOA.
Well,
what the county.
you don't actually have that before, you have to have someone before you requesting such a thing. I mean, there would be issues with, you don't know what they would be coming and requesting, and
Well,
I think it's
well,
not proper at this time.
you know, this is an issue in the subdivision that the county recognized it for years until you have everyone in that subdivision built on what, up to about 5 or 6 years ago. We did not agree with the covenant and restrictions, then they all would be in code violation because they built setback. So,
Yes.
you know, I think it's my opinion that if we could just take in all vacant lots that remains in that subdivision, we could do a variance request that, not request, just do a variance that all lots would conform to the covenant and restriction. And you don't think we can do that?
Generally, a request has to come before the board for the board to take action. So you would be taking action on something that's not before the board.
Well, isn't it because that the county has took the position not to accept them, that the county also should take the position to correct the whole thing?
And if the county wanted to change the code and put in an exception for certain properties, they could do that.
So the county just on behalf of the vacant lots in White Cliff come and ask for it on behalf of the county?
I would actually have to defer to Mr. Hall of whether or not the county can come forward on behalf of the association. Obviously, if the association came forward, that would be a different story, but it sounds like they
don't.
won't.
The thing about the association, I think we had discussion with this, Mr. Carpenter, that they didn't want to pay the money to do this.
Matt Carpenter for the Planning Department. We have requested at every opportunity that the association join in these requests so we could deal with it as you suggest at one time and be done with it, but the association apparently is not prepared to do that yet.
Because of the money issue?
Well, as these associations go, the people that already have their house built probably don't care
There shouldn't be that many
to
left.
participate in getting a variance for someone that they won't benefit from.
But there shouldn't be that many left in there, is that correct?
Not sure exactly how many lots. Jeff may have a better idea of how many are vacant.
I
out
have
there.
no idea.
Okay.
But for every opportunity, we encourage the association to come as the applicant for everyone's
Let
benefit.
me ask you this, it wouldn't be something on behalf of the county to do like a cleanup and just ask the board to do it?
That certainly is something the county could do. That would be a legislative decision. It's not something I can do, because as we learned in the various grand jury and state's attorney investigations, we don't have the authority to recognize the covenants, and that's why Wayne had to write that determination. The board has the authority to.
The county commissioner board
Yes,
should?
they could amend the land development code to recognize that.
I'm not asking for that, I'm just asking that you come and ask us to do it, you say you can't do that.
I can't represent someone that's not here. And it's not something that I can write a determination
Well,
to do.
I keep trying, so, thank you.
No,
Mr.
I'm with you, and I agree with you, and if we could deal with this one time for that entire subdivision, that would be our preference.
If we deal with it, Ms. Jennifer, you can always defend it if they appeal it, right?
I will look into some options for you. How's
Want
that?
you here when we do it. We don't want Hayward here. Thank you.
If I may,
Sure.
enter the staff report into the record, please.
By golly, I thank you very much. So entered Exhibit 1.
Question on that last discussion. Is it possible to, if the county brings it forward, he says the association doesn't want to have to pay for it, since it's to the county's advantage, could they waive the fee for that? Come forward?
Mr. Carpenter, I think the question is that if the fee was waived, then maybe the association would be glad to do it.
We do have the ability to waive fees for bona fide 501c3 nonprofit corporations. The board has given us that authority in a policy they adopted several years ago. That fee waiver has to be requested on their actual nonprofit letterhead. I'm not sure if they qualify or not. If they were a 501c3, they would qualify for that.
Is that something y'all could pass along to the association, or do y'all care? Are you the owner?
Yes.
You understand where we at and what we're doing? Well, they're all in violation if they hadn't been here, right, Mr. Carpenter?
I think she's speaking about future construction.
Yeah, but the ones that built without asking for theirs, they're in
I think
violation.
they're grandfathered in before Wayne wrote that determination.
If y'all would pass that along to the association and see if we can't do something to make their life easier and our life, well, we won't get to come to South Walton or Freeport that much, but. Okay. Kind of strange to talk to you with a Georgia Bulldog and Pardon me? You're welcome. Are y'all gonna have a good quarterback this year? Didn't y'all lose your quarterback? Good luck. Thank you. Where are we at? Item number 6. Which one? Let's see. We're at 6? Yeah. Bowron Residence, who's here for that? State your name for the record.
Paul Geary with T.S. Adams Studio.
Pardon me?
Paul Geary with T.S. Adams Studio Architects.
Paul. All right, I got you. What do you want us to do, Paul?
Okay, so the this actually involves 2 variance requests. So I'll present the first. I assume that you'd probably want a discussion about that one first and then the second, rather than do the entire presentation all at once. The first request is actually for an encroachment variance of the roof overhang on the front and on the rear. In the case of the front, a 1 foot encroachment variance in addition to the 18 inches that's already allowed by the LDC. And on the rear, a 1 foot 2 3/4 inch additional encroachment. And so basically, in this particular area of Sea Highland and Sea Grove, there is a covenant that's enforced in these particular lots with a 6 foot side setback. However, the platted setback is a 5 foot. So the roof line on this house was designed with a 2.5 foot overhang. And because of that 6 foot side setback, taking into account the 18 inches that are allowed into the 5 foot setback with that additional 1 foot, gave us a 2.5 foot side setback. But because of the geometry of this lot, it overhangs the front and in the rear by that amount that we're asking for. And it has to do with the geometry. We set the house up basically parallel to the side setbacks, and obviously to give the owner the best possible view to the Gulf. But the thing I want to point out is that the house to the east of this house is actually was approved only about a year or so before this house went through permitting. And as you can see, because it's a DEP property and there's a DEP purview over this lot, you can see that our surveyor basically gave us documentation on what was happening to the east and to the west. And so as you can see, if you have this attachment in the information that I uploaded to the portal, you'll see that the house actually to the east has not just a roof overhang encroachment, but an entire footprint that goes all the way up to 7 foot 10 and 7/8 from the rear property line. So way into the rear, 15-foot rear setback with their footprint of the house. We were required to adhere to the 15-foot rear setback, which we've done with the footprint. And the same thing could be said to the property to the west as well. This property actually was built with its footprint, actually 15 foot 2.25 from the front property setback, or from the front property line, way overstepping the front required setback of 20 feet. So we feel like this is there's already a lot of anomalies in this development already, this area of Seagrove. And in order to give the owner the overhang, the wider overhang that he's looking for architecturally, we're just asking, basically, we have to measure that encroachment on the diagonal when the property line is actually angled to the orientation of the house. And so we're kind of basically, instead of an 18-inch encroachment, now that becomes much less because of the angle of the front and the rear property lines. So we're just simply asking for really a 1 foot 1 inch encroachment on the front side, and then a 1 foot 2 3/4 on the rear, additional to the 18 inches allowed. And the other thing that I feel like is the purpose of that 18-inch overhang encroachment requirement of the code is really to prevent houses that are next to each other from being, roof lines being too close and because of fire and safety and that sort of thing. This is really an issue. Basically, the south of this property is the Gulf. There's really no neighbor. And then the front, really, there's at least 60 feet to the next house in front. So I really feel like it doesn't encroach on any kind of public safety issue. It's just merely basically an issue of the geometry of the lot and asking just to have a consistent overhang around the house, basically.
Is the house built?
It's under construction.
So why are you asking now?
Yeah, how did we get here?
I mean, why are you asking for, you already building the house, got a roof on it, don't it?
It
No,
does not
it's a
have a roof
slab.
on it yet.
It's a
Yeah.
slab.
So, yeah, there's a
Footprint's
slab there
established,
as
but
exists. Yeah,
How did you get planning approval with the roof as drawn?
we foreshortened the roof overhang in order to get a permit for the property. But the owner's asking basically if there would be any possibility of exception in this particular case. Just to have a consistent overhang. If you look at the fabric of the neighborhood, there are quite a few houses with larger, wider overhangs similar to this. It's just it really, we've been in the planning process about 2 years, and really in that time, I think the permitting offices and the planning department has really become very vigilant about that 18 inches of overhang. So it was planned all along to have the wider overhangs, but as a result of it going through permitting roughly 2 years later after the start of this project, it basically, there was this encroachment issue that came up as we went through permitting. And
What's the photos in the packets for?
oh, yeah. So you can kind of see, actually 2 and 3 would be really subject for the first variance. So you can see here in this photograph in number 2, the concrete of the actual house that we're proposing is already under construction, but you can see the property to the west, this blue house in the distance, You can see it encroaches a lot further into that front setback, and that was obviously approved by the county at some point, allowed. So this house is probably built in the 60s or 70s, I'm not sure, but it is an older house. But nonetheless, it did not adhere. I don't know of any change that's ever occurred as far as the front setback goes. It's always been 20 feet, from my understanding. So somehow that was allowed. And then the second, photo 3 in your packet is a view from the rear. And you can see that the footprint, this entire porch, and everything here, you see the slab in the foreground of that photograph. You can see they're good about 8 feet further south from us.
I can speak to that. I believe that they came to the board and asked for a variance to have the Gulf front setback
Reduced.
To the
Okay.
CPZ.
All right, so let's get back to item number 1.
We're asking just really for a roof overhang variance, not really for a footprint in their case.
Hang on a minute.
Mhm.
You're asking on the land development code that overhang encroachment on the front yard, that's on the front, you want
Correct.
to increase that from 18 inches to 31, right?
31, correct.
And then, let's see. Is that the rear setback, you want to go from 18 to 32,
Mhm.
just for the roof, right?
And it's really just that, if you look at my site plan, it's really just that little corner of the roof that's encroaching that much.
Hang on a second. Ms. Jennifer, should we take and address these one at a time, go through it and vote on it? Or do we need to listen to all of them and then vote on them at one time? What do you think? What's your recommendation?
Either one is fine, just whatever's easier for the board, if they want to address them one at a time. If there's a potential for separate responses, then you may want to do them one at a time.
Sit down a minute. We heard from you. Go ahead and
Okay.
sit down.
Okay.
Stephen? I'm sorry. I'm just sorry as I can be. We're gonna do these one at a time, if that's okay with the board. So we're addressing the first one. So
Yes, sir.
tell us what you think on the first one.
Stephen Schoen, Planning and Development Services, addressing item number 1 only here. Staff, again, I sound like a broken record up here, but has determined that there really is not a code-required hardship here. It's really an aesthetic and design want is the bottom line here.
You don't run across this very often, do you? Where you have a roof overhang greater than 18 inches.
I personally don't, no.
Thank you. Any questions for Stephen? Go ahead, Ms. Waterman.
Additional overhang, does that cause any runoff problems as far as water goes?
Neighbor?
That would, I'm sure, be addressed in their stormwater plan, whatever is required per code.
I'm sure it has gutters on it now at 18 inches, and the extension would still have to have gutters to direct it into the stormwater system.
Thank you, Steve.
You're welcome.
Anyone here from the, go ahead.
Before I forget, let's put the staff report into the project record, please.
So entered.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For the record, I think that the overhang should be increased from 18 to 36 for all projects in Walton County.
I don't care about your personal opinion at this point. Are there anyone, hang on a minute, is there anyone from the audience like to speak in response to this? Okay, you get to come up and say the last thing. Do you have anything to add to it?
No, I don't have anything to add, other than, it is an aesthetic consideration, but at the same time, it has to do with the geometry, and that's what we feel our
I don't
hardship.
want to repeat now.
Okay,
You have
okay.
anything new to add?
No, I don't have
Okay.
anything to add.
We're going to take and close item number 1 to public discussion, and then we open the discussion back up to item number 2. So item number 1, we're going to close it, public discussion. May I have a motion to close it?
Second.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion on item number 1. We have know what we have. We asked them from on the front from 18 to 32 and from.
I'll make a motion to approve the roof overhangs on the front and the rear of the building as submitted.
Prejudice. Since you want to. I have a motion. Do I have a second? I have a second. Discussion. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, we got number one out of the way.
Thank you. Thank you very
Before
much.
you start the other one, Joe, why do you think it should be 36?
Better looking than 18 inches.
I agree. 36 with wind load, I think 24 would be better, but 36 with the gusts of the wind down there.
We figured out how to engineer that.
Oh, and guarantee it? Yeah, like surveyors? Next item.
All right, the next item
Sorry
is,
about that.
If I get
I wasn't
dragged into
talking
this.
about you. I was talking about Volker. Go ahead. No.
Yep.
No.
the second item involves basically the curb cut. I want to first call your attention to photo number one. This is this house was built in the 50s initially. The new house obviously is under construction now. It was a tear down. But you can see from the image from Google, that was the house that previously existed there. It had a double curb cut and a single curb cut. When we went through planning, we were told we were not allowed to have more than one, and that's in the LDC. But then later it was told that we could have two of a 10-foot width. And as you can see, the garage is a double loaded garage. And so it's really too hard to maneuver the car out of that garage and not have a double width on the second. So what we're asking for is basically the reverse of the existing property prior to the build. And so basically, because of the plan and what we came up with in terms of the living spaces and everything, the garage seemed best on the left-hand side. So we had hoped to actually just get that approved through planning as a grandfather. However, they said because we reversed it, it was no longer in the footprint of the original. Therefore, we needed a variance to actually allow it. And then the photograph number 4 shows you something that, don't know whether this was actually approved by planning or not, but this is actually on that same road. You see there's a double curb cut. This is on 146 Montgomery Street, double curb cut and a single curb cut on that same property. We're really asking what's already in precedent out there, really asking for the owner to be allowed to use a circular drive in a similar fashion to what he had prior to the build.
You asking approval of variance to allow two connection to the roadway to exceed how much? How much are you exceeding the 20?
Yeah, that I should have put a dimension on there, but the smaller one car bay is a 12-foot width, and the left-hand one, the double, is actually 20-foot width.
Okay, let's see, approval of variance, section 5.0404 to allow for two resident driveway connection exceeding the maximum 20 feet in width. I mean, am I missing something here? Are they asking for more than 20 feet? And you said 12 and 20, so you're not asking for anything greater than 20? Or are you just asking for two?
Yeah, well, the way I'd understood it was that we can have two, but they have to be, I could be getting my numbers wrong here, but they could be no more than 12 foot in width. Maybe Stephen could speak to that, but that's the way I'd understood it when we were going through the variance and applying for it. We could have two in this particular area of Seagrove, but they could not exceed a single car width.
I'd like to hear
width.
from Stephen. Stephen, explain to me that second, because the way I understand it, he's asking for two residential driveway connection is exceeding the maximum 20 feet. To me, he wanted 24, 36, or 40, and he didn't put a limit in it. Am I reading that right, or am I wrong?
No, I believe that you're interpreting that correctly, and that they're seeking for two driveways. The code allows for a maximum of a single 20-foot driveway, essentially. Internal conversations with my leadership, we determined at the onset of this application that if they could do 2 driveways at a maximum of 10 foot as not to exceed the maximum 20 feet, that would be approved.
Okay, now, you talking about allowing 2 driveways that is gonna be 10 foot in width, which will not exceed the 20 foot total.
That's correct. That's what we proposed to the applicant to avoid the variance process. They would like a 20-foot driveway and a 12-foot driveway exceeding the minimum 20 or the maximum 20 by 12 feet.
So what they're asking for, they want a variance to have 2 driveways, and they want one of them to be 12 feet, and they want the other one to be 20 feet, which would be a total of 32 feet, which would be exceeding the 20 foot.
Yes, sir.
Right? Okay, I think I understand that now. Go ahead.
I think there's a question for Mac because this only recently started being enforced, where I'm wondering what the purpose of reducing the curb cuts for residential to 20 feet, what that's trying to accomplish.
To limit curb cuts on public roadways.
For safety.
And to reduce the impervious surface on the lot. In this particular case, they're looking to maximize the buildable area, build the biggest house possible, and that's why they're asking for the extra driveways.
To accommodate the parking.
But it'd be used for parking.
Could be used for parking,
Got
yes.
20 foot, then you use that for parking,
Yes.
in which they're required to have 4 parking spaces, and they meet that, right?
I think that's what may have been approved on the
So if you have a larger
plan.
parking space, then you could rent it for more money and make more money for more people.
Yes, and I believe that's one of those things that specifically excludes approval of the base.
Pardon me?
If I can make more money,
Right.
that can't be the justification for my
Right.
variance.
But also, one of the reasons to limit is the safety of entering the highway, back and
Yes,
forth
sir.
on the highway is why you take and you limit the size. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
That's a safety issue from the county position, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Stephen, you have anything else?
No, sir.
You never did tell me exactly how you feel about this.
Well, I was actually going to ensure that the applicant had his full say here. I wasn't sure he was done or not.
Well, all right, go ahead.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Yeah, staff, again, has determined that there is really a lack of hardship in this request, and it's simply reflecting a historical use and a desire to continue that use.
Anything else?
No, sir.
Any questions? Ms. Waterman? Thank you, Stephen. You understand?
I think I got it the first time. This is just the second item of that one. Thank you.
It's covered in that first. Come back up and, are you done?
Just to add that there was a question on the table whether the runoff and, whether this had been taken into account with the stormwater, and we have a full engineered drainage plan on this plan. As well, the other thing I wanted to enter in is just the fact that this owner does not plan, it's not a rental property. I know you can't control future use, but at least for now, I mean, this is meant to be their permanent residence, and they're not planning to use, if it matters any. So anyway,
Okay.
that's it.
Thank you. Anyone from the audience has anything to say in regards to this? Motion to close it, public discussion.
Motion to close public discussion.
Second.
Second.
Motion. We need a motion to approve it, or we need a motion to deny it, but we need a motion.
I'll make the motion to approve the additional curb cut width as submitted.
Now, you are making a motion to take and approve 2 driveways 10 feet, or are you taking the motion to approve 2 driveways, one 12 feet and one 20 feet?
1 12 feet and 1 20 feet.
That's your motion.
My motion.
Have a second. Just a second. Discussion. Ms. Waterman, you talk about that, okay, then we can discuss.
I think the advantage of the 2 driveways, that keeps people from backing out into the street. So the safety factor from the additional curb cut, I think, is offset by the fact you can actually turn around in the driveway.
Burgess?
Well, I'd like to add, it was a historical use, only mirror image.
The historical use, was it that wide?
Well, that I can't really tell from the photos, but it did have.
Pardon me?
It was a double and single, it looks like.
What did you say, Charlie?
The double and a single also.
Charlie, what you have to say?
I agree with the other two comments that were just given.
I kind of disagree. I think 2 10-foot would be adequate. I don't think they need to have a 20-foot and a 12-foot because I think it's going to turn into a parking garage. I think when you start backing up that many vehicles on a small road, that's a safety issue. I personally think it'd be safer if you had 2 10s instead of 12 and a 32. I mean, you can get quite a few vehicles in that. So
I disagree with your point, because you have a 2-car garage that for those 2 vehicles to back out, you would need at least the 20-foot curb cut to service that garage.
pull them in at the same time.
Try to skinny it down from 20 to 10, you create a lot of headache trying to get in and out of the garage, and that becomes a massive problem. There's a lot of open space on this lot on either side, so I don't think the additional lot coverage is unreasonable impact, and Montgomery Street is not a high traffic area, so I think in this case, instead of trying to double stack the 4 cars behind the garage door, allowing those vehicles to park in the roundabout driveway would actually encourage people not to park in the street.
If you got a circular driveway, it looks to me like that circular driveway is should be what, by the old image, I don't know what the new one is. If it back out, pull in without a problem, if it is a 2-car. Still think there's a problem with that.
I think it's hard to use a 10-foot curb cut with that configuration of driveway.
Entitled to your opinion. Mr. Henderson. We have a motion to approve 2 curbs, 112, 120. We have a second. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. You received your variance. They were wrong, but you received it. Last item on the agenda. Baskerville Donovan on behalf of Vicky. Who we have here for tonight?
Yes, sir. My name is Michael Langston. I'm the agent for owner. I'm also will be the engineer for the project should we move forward. And I also have with me today Gene Sykes, who's the architect for the project. He's with Baskerville Architects, no relation. Gene came down from Virginia today, so I want to say, Mr. Chairman, thank you for hearing us tonight.
Sure.
Appreciate the opportunity to present our case to you. I hope you and your family are doing well during this coronavirus. It's kind of hard to communicate these ways, but we're here tonight to present a variance. Ours also has 2 different variances we're asking for. I would like to have those done concurrently instead of individually. One can't move forward without the other. Wanted to give you a little bit of history about the project, if I could.
Hang on a minute. You want us to listen to both of them and make a determination on both of them?
Yes, sir.
Correct? Because one is the, okay. Go ahead.
One's related to the other.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Just a little background on the project here. This land it's over there in the scenic 98 Gulf Corridor, right there on the corner of old Gulf Beach, old 98 and new US 98. There's an existing hotel there now. It was originally platted as condominiums. It is squeezed in between some residential residential properties and some businesses. It was originally constructed as a Holiday Inn. It's changed, flagships changed several times over the years. Went from Holiday Inn to Ramada Inn to Quality Inn. It's currently a Quality Inn been the same owner since it was first built. That's important thing to make here. Right now, it's a 4-story building. With access to the building is through the corridor. It has open hallways. And so that's one of the issues right now is access to it is not the safest in the way with regard to hotels these days. It does not have an internal restaurant or any other retail amenities that attracts the public to this facility other than renting rooms. The purpose for these requests is the hotel industry has taken a hit here lately. They're trying to find ways to stay in business more than anything. They need to stay competitive in the market. In order to do that, they had different flagships, different corporate hotel chains are looking ways to build hotels. And the new 4-story facility that would be proposed to replace this one, they would tear down the existing and build a new one, but it would have internal access, which would increase safety for the facility. And that kind of meets the corporate brand design requirements. So if you have something external like that, it's not really appealing. It's a small site, and the size of the property basically limits what we can do on the site and still meet the requirements of the corporate brand requirements. So we're asking for a reduction in the ratio of parking from 1.1 to 0.9, which is about a 19% reduction. So that ratio is per hotel room. In addition to that, we're also asking for a reduction in the spacing of the landscape islands so that we can meet our parking goals.
Help me out here. If you have a room, you're saying that you need 1.4 parking. Is that right? If you have a hotel room, you're saying you need 1.4 parking spaces.
1.1 space
1.1.
per room by code.
And you want to reduce that to have 0.9.
Yes, sir.
So you don't have enough parking for the rooms?
Yes, sir. I'm prepared to address that too.
Well, why don't you go ahead and address that? How many rooms are you going to have? How many rooms are you going to have in this hotel?
103 rooms.
103 rooms. How many parking spaces you going to have? 99?
No, sir. The parking spaces, of course, we haven't designed the facility yet. We're here proactive, not reactive. So we're trying to get approval on something before the facility is designed.
Right.
103 rooms.
91 on the site plan.
Yes, sir. I had my notes here just a second. 91, exactly.
And do you think 103 people are going to be happy if they fighting over a parking space?
Well, let me say this. There's a few things that you need to consider.
Okay.
First of all, the hotel market, 68 to 70% annual occupancy. This particular facility is a family-oriented. Most people come in larger vehicles. They have, typically the rental is 2 per vehicle on average. Most of the time the guests rent 2 rooms. Industry trend now is that people come in, they come to the airport, they get an Uber, they get a taxi, they get transportation somehow to the facility. They don't necessarily have to have a vehicle. This is a family-oriented facility. In addition to that, the parking will be controlled by passes issued at the reservation desk. So you can't park there unless you have a pass. So that's how you would regulate that. And of course, it's up to the owner. If they don't have parking, you can't really rent a hotel room. So.
Are you gonna be able to park a 2,500 Chevy pickup, or are they just gonna be designed for little Volkswagen?
No, sir. Those are, I believe they are 20 feet long spaces through the whole parking area.
Well, let me
And
ask
they
you
meet the
this.
land development code.
Let me ask you this. Some places has parking for smaller vehicles. Am I correct on this, on small vehicles? Isn't some towns you go
Yeah.
to, they have certain smaller vehicles parking? And then you have larger vehicles parking? Would that not help you get your ratio without the variance?
Well,
Come on, if you got something,
If I may address.
state your name for the record.
Yes, sir. Gene Syke, Baskerville Architect. If I could assist,
Sure, you can stay up there. You don't have to leave.
yes, you're correct. You are allowed to use a compact space as a percentage of your total spaces for compact spaces. However, as was stated before, what the target market is and what has always been the target market for this facility is a extended family group with larger vehicles and larger groups with single vehicles, that the compact space doesn't benefit the facility. So we've designed this thing based on the larger space to code, which is 9 by 20, and merely what we're asking for is just the percentage reduction from 1.1 to 0.9 in order to facilitate the maximum number of rooms that we can get for branding. Yes, sir.
It's about,
How many
Hang on.
employees would you anticipate would work in this facility with 103 rooms?
Typically, you've got a person working at your front desk, and then your cleaning staff, which would probably be one per floor, so 4. So 5 total.
So yeah, you got 86 parking spaces left for 103 rooms. And this is a peak occupancy kind of a town. And I've been to hotels where you drive around in circles and can't find anywhere to park, and it be displacing those people into other areas to try to find a place.
I'm not really sure I'm following you, because if the 1.1 ratio is already including the employee count.
You're asking for a reduction to that.
Exactly, based on the fact that what we're seeing for this facility in terms of its maximum occupancy through the years, they have the data for that, which is showing around 80% maximum occupancy, even at the high points.
Why not just build 80% of buildings so you can meet your parking requirement then?
Well, brand standards also has a requirement too, as far as the minimum number of rooms that they will allow you to do in order to get their brand.
But explain that.
Well, for example, Holiday Inn would say, okay, I'm just using that, that's not necessarily who we're going after, would say, okay, the feasibility for you to have our brand at this location, the feasibility for you, in order to get that branding, you need to meet this number of rooms in order to get our flag. All right, so that's where the 103 is our maximum limit that we're shooting for. And in working backwards with the 20% or a 19% reduction gives us the 91 parking spaces based on 103 rooms. The occupancy on this hotel as it is, I believe it's 80%, 82%. 68, I believe. 62.
That's 80% over the year, right?
That's 80% at the high point, if I'm not mistaken. Your peak points, which is between May and end of July.
68 to 70% annually occupancy.
Any other questions? Do you have anything else to add?
Yes, sir, not this time.
Now that is the one we talked about, the 19%. Okay, what's your second request?
Second request had to do with the spacing of the landscape islands within the parking bays. in order to achieve the number of parking spaces we needed based on the footprint of the hotel. We had tried to find a way to get the spaces in there that were needed, but right now, the landscape islands between parking spaces is, by code, by the Land Development Code, is 10. For every 10 spaces, you have to have an island. So what we're asking for is to stretch that out a little bit and make that 15 spaces per landscape island.
How many islands would that give you?
You have the site plan right there in front of you.
It's
That only affects 2 different bays of parking, I do believe.
That's correct.
Saved one, it gave them one additional parking space.
Pardon me?
Gave them one additional parking space.
Yeah, but how many islands?
Well, they should have had 2 islands, and now they've got 1.
I thought it was every 15 spaces.
No, it's every
If you
10.
got 90, if you got 90 spaces, if it's 10, you're gonna have 9. Am I understanding that
They
right?
have 2 runs of 15. They should have had 3 runs of 10. Took one of the islands out. Gained 1 space.
91 spaces.
They would have only had 90 if they hadn't gotten rid of the island.
But 1 is required for 90 spaces.
No, it's, they're only allowed to have 10 spaces in a row without breaking it up with an island.
Right.
They've got 2 runs now, 15.
I guess I better look at the thing. Are you done with your presentation?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. We'll give you a chance. Come back.
Thank you.
Stephen.
Stephen Schoen, Planning and Development Services. The requested action, based on a number of factors, does not satisfy the hardship requirements that the code requires for the approval of a variance. It's important to consider, as Mr. Chick brought up, there are ongoing parking issues in this area, and this would only exacerbate.
Could he give, could he get away, could he do away with that other landscape? Not have no landscape in between the 15?
It's just gaining you 1 space. We're way short on parking spaces. So he's talking about it in terms of a percentage or a ratio of the rooms, but if it's 1.1 times 103 rooms, they need 113 parking spaces. They provided 91.
Hey, you basically got a 19, they don't meet the parking requirement by 19%. I think that's pretty significant.
Staff report.
Please enter into the record.
So enter. Do you have anything else to add? You're good?
No, I'll answer any other questions you may have.
No, we're good.
Thank you.
You want to come up and help your case? Because I think you're in trouble.
Yes, sir. I want to reemphasize that the trend of these type facilities, these type hotels.
Hang on a second. Karen, you need a minute? Go ahead. Sure.
I apologize. There was a number of additional public comments that were received after publication of the staff report. I would also like to include those in the record, if I may.
Those?
You guys.
This is item 7, and this is going to be County Exhibit 2. Is that right, Jennifer? And you're referring to this email that was received or was from Sylvia Murray.
Bunch of them.
This is people that are in opposition, right?
Yes, sir.
So entered.
Thank you.
Okay, now you can come up.
Yes, sir. I want to reemphasize one more time about the the use of the hotel and who comes to those hotels, what type of facilities, what type of vehicles they come in. The industry trend is for people to reduce their transportation by using Uber or taxi or some other means to get to the hotel, which would significantly reduce the amount that they need for these type of facilities. You know, there's this is not a public facility as far as an amenity that attracts others. The parking that's on the facility is solely for those who rent the hotel. We have talked about having the pass where it's controlled through the reservation office. You only have so many passes to put out for the facility as who can park there, and you know, the business regulates their own parking. So the industry standards are that the parking lots are not full for the majority of the time. There are cases where the adjacent parking, people come to the beach, people use the businesses next door. They wrongfully use the parking to access the beach through the public access. And by having this pass activity where you issue the pass, you're not supposed to be there, you could be towed off if you left your car there all day. So that helps reduce the requirement for the parking without having any kind of amenity like a restroom or restaurant or anything like that in there that attracts people to the facility. The attraction is solely based on the number of rooms that you have to rent. And then again, the corporate brand, they have certain requirements of number of rooms and associated parking spaces that go with that, combined with the landscaping requirements, which also exceeds the land development code. So we ask you to consider this tonight. The hotel it's been there for a while. It doesn't meet any standard. You can't renovate it. It would have to be torn down and replaced with a newer facility. It's good for the community. People may not think it is, but it is in a commercial district. The new hotel will be the same height, same size, as far as number of stories. The occupancy rate during the year is 68 to 70% annually. During the peak season, it may be 80%.
Good question.
Yes, sir.
Have you checked with the other hotels in the area to verify that?
No, sir.
This just something that y'all come up with? Have you called down on Saturday night and asked for a room in the other areas within 10? Sure. Sure.
That information, those statistics are coming from the owner themselves, who have been operating the property for over 20 to 25 years now.
You're talking about this owner?
This owner and this property.
You're not talking about a Hampton Inn that may come there that...
No. We're talking about this owner maintaining ownership of this property and wanting a new, modern brand that meets industry standards. And it also should be pointed out before, if I may, it also should be pointed out that what's being proposed is a suites, not a hotel, but it's more of a suites-oriented thing, which is also directed specifically towards families and extended families who are making a trip to this destination in one vehicle.
Okay, I got it.
Is a suites something that has a pull-out sleeper sofa? Yes.
It could, or it could be a conjoining rooms. It could be a double.
But were you saying that the occupancy for the building was based on the current owner's experience of 60% occupancy?
Yes, sir.
So I'm not surprised, given the age of the facility, but you put a new facility in there and you're going to have a lot more people wanting to stay there and you're short on parking for all the rooms.
But then again, you're also controlling the number of parking and who's allowed to park there as well.
Again, I don't understand why you need 103 rooms if you're planning on operating it at a reduced occupancy.
Well, if you...
If you would, be sworn in.
Would you raise your
Come up, raise your hand.
Would you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
State your name for the record.
My name is Manoj Chauhan. I'm actually one of the owners.
Did you get that?
Manoj Chauhan. Some of the questions that you all have.
Microphone.
Some of the questions that you guys have addressed are some operational questions, which I could probably talk better at that than, as far as the architects and the engineers. And
Speak up, please.
as far as the operational questions, I
Sure.
can
Answer.
address them probably a little bit, more precisely than they can. This would be a suite type product, such as, like you had mentioned, a Hampton Inn and Suite, or some of the different, brands that are out there. This type of product does have a sleeper sofa. So this particular room, for example, could actually accommodate up to 6 people. So these suite products, you take 2, many families come into the market here and they rent 2 rooms and come in 1 car. It's very common. So you have 6 people, you can do up to 6 people in 1 room. The adjoining room can do another 6 people. So you're looking at almost 12 people. That's 12 people that can, potentially come in, 2 Suburbans. So you're renting 3 rooms, 2 cars. 3 room, 2 cars, for example. And then many times people are flying in, such as Allegiant. Allegiant brings in so many people into this market. They're coming in, in cabs, for example. Or they're using Uber and Lyft to, travel around the area also. Plus, we do group business, so you could have like those small Sprinter buses coming in. You could have 2 of those that could take up, 10, 15 of your guest rooms also. We've had this facility for over 20 or 22 years. I grew up in the area. We have other hotels in our portfolio also. We operate over 11 different states with about 27 to 30, hotels, all those different states. So, these products, these types of suite products in these leisure markets, they don't demand as many cars as we are used to from, if you look back in, if you go back in time, before Uber, Lyft, and the way people kind of travel today also. And especially in this market, we've had a lot of growth through, Southwest coming into this market, and especially Allegiant coming into this market, and, more Delta flights coming in also, some of the discount carriers. And times are a little different right now, but as things get better again after COVID, I see these flights starting to come back again eventually. So, we won't need to drive as many cars as 1.1 for example, a hotel room. It's very, very similar to some of the big homes that you see on Old 98 and 30A. Some of these homes, sleep 20, 24, 25 people, and you see maybe, 3 or 4 Suburbans out there, the XL kind.
But sometimes you also see 12 to 14 cars at some of those bigger houses. And my personal experience with some of these types of hotels when we travel is that the parking lots are always full, and it's a struggle for us to find a place to park. And so this just seems very inadequate, just based on the number of rooms. I would expect that this place would be operating at almost full occupancy for the season, from spring break through the summer.
And over the years, even at 100% occupancy, which is not that often throughout the year, if you take industry standards, and if you look at what we call the Smith Travel Report, for example, this is about a 68 to a 70% overall annual occupancy market. And Smith Travel is a very standardized, they put out very standardized statistical data for the whole industry. That's kind of where we're at, and we've modeled this hotel at a 68 to a 70% occupancy rate also. And in the nights that you may be at 100% occupancy, we don't end up utilizing all the parking spots just because of the people that come in and rent, multiple guest rooms at a time. and I see that over and over at this particular location. We've had it from the day we built it. My father originally built it many years ago. That's one of the big reasons for, the decrease in parking that we're asking for.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah, yes, sir.
If I may too, there's a little bit of history behind this as well. It's actually been a year today that we started working with the county on this project and the proposed site plan. We were trying to accomplish a way in order to get the branding feasibility size of the 103 max rooms with and how to work that out, justify that with the parking deficiency as you brought up and as everybody's aware. At the time, we worked through different avenues with the county in how to best facilitate both worlds. We even were entertaining utilizing certain aspects within the code that permit a 20% reduction, but it doesn't suit this particular site. Doesn't work with this site, that exception that's allowed for back of house, back of building reduction. So this became the agreed upon best means in order to accomplish the best of both worlds, to meet the brand standards and to meet the county's expectations in terms of parking. In conjunction with that, there's also, I know as the county has stipulated, line item number 4, nobody meets that. Hardly ever, except for the one handicap case before you. But in item E, we do meet that in how we've been working with the county and remain willing to work with the county on giving back certain embellishments to the property and its development. Mainly the access from the 39 Scenic Road to the beach, which currently right now stops at the back lot, the back property line of the facility. And we were proposing that as a means to encourage people not to park on our site, but to have access from the street, which y'all are now developing with the new sidewalks and everything, to embellish that from the street point to the back of the property to continue that straight shot to the beach. And so there's been some give and take history that hasn't been presented tonight until just now as to how we've gotten to this point with the county.
You're giving a sidewalk for people to access the beach on your property.
There's an easement right now that's already called for, and we're willing, proposing to develop it.
You're proposing that easement.
No, the easement exists, and we're proposing to develop it and take it to its full fruition.
And that's
It's not being utilized right now.
But will that also be beneficial to your guests?
No, because right now we have access to that. If the property were to do it without that extended access, the guests could have access to the current sidewalk just by going through the back of the property, at the back property line.
So you have access to the beach?
The hotel has access, but we're willing to give access back to the community instead of cutting it completely off. Also, we're willing to, there's been discussions of screening walls instead of a fence right now to screen the property parking lot from the neighbors as well.
Go ahead, Jeff.
I think all the things that you're doing, I saw where you moved the dumpster, and I mean, I think the site plan is actually really well done, and it looks like it's going to be a really good-looking facility. My question was, how many rooms were in the facility that's being taken down?
62, I believe.
So the problem is that the site is not large enough to accommodate a 103-room hotel facility, and eked every bit of usable space out of the property that you could, while
maintaining landscaping too.
Right, and I mean, I don't want to speak for everybody else, but I mean, the landscape islands isn't really the issue here. It's 103 rooms and.
In the 91 spaces.
Right, and.
I think we need to do this summation and get this over with. I think we understand where this is at. And it's my understanding, and I'm just gonna try to brief it, is that you won't build a new hotel. You own the property for many years. You're gonna go from a 68 to 103. You can't add any property to it. To meet a brand, you got to have 103 spaces. It's not, you can't do anything less. And that's your testimony. You can't get a brand name for less rooms. You need to speak up a little bit, please.
Now the brand, that's something that's going to be negotiable with the brand on the units.
So you can get a brand with less rooms in a market that we're in. I mean, if you're in a premium market, then you should be able to get a brand with less rooms if the occupancy is going to be greater than it would be in another area. That feasible?
Getting a brand is feasible, but
with less rooms.
It can be possible, yes.
Okay. You have anything else to add?
I did want to make a point to Mr. Chick's comment, but, you said in the past you've gone to other hotel locations, had, trouble parking. And that's very market driven also. If you're in an area where there's a heavy concentration of corporate business, for example, or there's a heavy concentration of corporate and leisure also, corporate business definitely drives, a lot of cars when it comes to one-to-one. And in this market that we're in, it's pure leisure. There's hardly any corporate business here at all. So I just kind of want to make a point on that.
Anything, I'm going to give you just a minute to sum up. Do you have anything to say?
Again, just to reiterate that based on the feasibility studies, in order for the branding to accept the brand line, that's what they were shooting for, was the 103 was their target mark. And that's why we've been pushing that number.
Does different brands have different numbers?
Different brands do have different numbers, but with the suite styles, which is what's more conducive to this market, that's what they're after. The beach access people? Well, those are local people. That's not our.
It's a county beach access.
Yeah.
And if you're familiar with the area, there used to be the Regions Bank on the corner, and then there's a public beach access there, and I believe there's some parking there also, and this beach access that's bordering our property, it's a county access.
But it's not open up.
It's not what?
It's not usable. It's not being used at this time.
From 98 onward, it's just weeds and grass. So we've actually with an agreement with the county, we've improved a portion of the backside with the remaining other landowners also that are behind us.
I have a question.
But with it.
If you were unable to get a variance from the 1.1 to the 0.9 car ratio, would you be okay with like just an even 1, like a 10% instead of a 20%? Would that be more amenable to you than no variance at all?
We would have to evaluate that.
Okay.
It would require some further evaluation. All the evaluations were based on the 103.
Okay.
And the demand of car parking that's really needed based on, just due to the different ways people travel today.
Okay.
Okay, we've been over that. Anything else? Thank you. Mr.
you.
Carpenter?
Matt Carper for the Planning Department. A couple of points to consider. If this board chooses to approve the variance, their application for this hotel will come back to this board for final decision, according to Land Development Code.
Oh, wait a minute, say that again.
If this board chooses to approve the variance, the Land Development Code requires their development order application to come back before this board for final approval.
Okay.
As opposed to being approved at staff level or at the BCC, depending on the size of the development. This developer is already utilizing a reduced compatibility measure, an alternate compatibility measure to eliminate the land use buffer. They're proposing a masonry wall instead of the required separation distance between adjacent properties. So they're gaining additional usable space by that alternative compatibility measure. Planning Department is fine with that alternative compatibility measure. It's probably very appropriate for a hotel. The easement that they're describing, at least the northern portion of that, does not have any public interest. And there may be some question as to who actually owns it. But we were recently asked to abandon that, and we had a legal opinion from Sidney Noyes that the county has no interest in that easement, or at least the northern portion. It is not open and has not been used, and it is not a county beach access. I just want to make you aware of those things.
If they were to do what they were talking about and allow and develop the easement along that north side of their property, would that give public access to Chick-fil-A? I mean, like somebody else?
Public access to Chick-fil-A.
Okay, that's all.
And one of the concerns about reduced parking in this particular neighborhood, I mean, Scenic Gulf Drive has very limited parking from one end to the other. We're looking at adding public parking along Scenic Gulf Drive. But one of my concerns is they don't own the property right across the street, which is a private parking lot for the shopping center. Chick-fil-A is in the edge of that particular parking lot. Their overflow parking is going to park there. What they may want to consider is contacting that developer and see if they have any excess parking that they might want to lease to them for an off-site parking facility to meet the parking requirement on their site. It couldn't be shared parking because the hotel and the shopping center are typically open at the same time, but the shopping center may have more parking spaces than the code requires, and that's one possible solution for them to meet their parking. They can provide some off-site parking.
What about, are there any studies that the county has conducted as far as, like he was saying, that, people come to the area for cabs, Uber, that will not drive? I mean, are y'all seeing more of that since the traffic is, very congested in that area? Is that something that y'all are studying now, or something that
One of the things that we are looking at, we're looking at parking throughout South County. The TDC has purchased a number of parking lots through the BCC, or parcels that will become parking lots, and we're analyzing the parking need right now. And at some point in the near future, we expect to meter all the public parking spaces. Free for locals, but if you're not local, you'll pay like you'll pay in Hilton Head.
But has the county conducted a study? How many people comes to the area without a vehicle that flies in and rents a cab and goes to?
Well, as you're aware, we're in the COVID crisis right now. Prior to, a certain number do. Whether that segment of the population that flies to the destination and then takes public transportation or private transportation to their destination, this may or may not be one of those locations. One of the things that we found, some of the most successful hotels in South County are boutique hotels that do not have a chain brand. And the county absolutely is encouraging that kind of development as opposed to the more commodity chain brand that becomes any place USA. Walton County is a very unique place. We enjoy higher average daily rates for our vacation rentals than either of our two sister counties, Bay County or Okaloosa County. In fact, the average daily rate that TDC bed tax collections were based on for June was about $558 per night, average over 30 nights. Approximately 94% occupancy for June. One of the things that was this past month, yes, sir.
94%.
We've got more people in town than we ever had before. We have more units available this year than we ever had before, but rents are higher, bed tax collections are higher.
The June of 2019, do you have any idea, was it 94, 96%? I guess what I'm trying to average is there any way that the TDC had any statistics that from March until October the 1st that the occupancy of these is 90%?
I'm sure they do, but I don't have that available to me tonight.
Any other questions?
I think there's some public comment.
Anyone from the public wants to speak?
I don't know. There was a lot of people writing letters.
Will the owner come back up? I have a question for you. Is there a possibility that you could do a different type of hotel with less rooms? And like Mr. Carpenter was talking about, kind of specialize and raise your rent, I mean, and
If, a product like that is more conducive to the 30A market versus this market that we're in.
Don't tell me there's a difference in 30A market and Miramar and Sandestin, that market?
There is.
There is a difference
There's
there?
a considerable difference, yes, price range predominantly. On this side of town, we don't get the kind of rates like the Watercolor Inn would get or the Pearl would get. They are the hotels that are getting the, $500, $600, $700 a night in the season.
I would agree with that.
Okay.
And then,
Okay. So the
this is
answer
a
to your question, the answer to my question is that you need this 103 room to make this work, and without it, it won't work. That's
right now, all the evaluations and the financial, performance we've put together has been based on the 103.
All right. Thank you very much.
Did you guys explore the
We fixed it in
additional
process now.
parking lease of the shopping center across the street at all?
I have spoken to them some years ago, before they even built the Chick-fil-A, about just, various, development items because they were in the retail business. And they also talked about doing a hotel at some point in time. And I know back then they didn't have parking capacity because they were having difficulty because we were just chatting one day and they told me that they were having difficulty meeting their parking requirement due to the Chick-fil-A, for example.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Motion to close the public discussion. Second.
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
We need a motion. We have two variance requests. We need a motion on both of them. Pardon me? Somebody needs to make a motion if it's just
I'll
for
make a motion
discussion.
to approve the variance, both of them, as presented for discussion.
Second. Need a second to discuss it. Okay, you gonna second it?
I'm sorry, Charlie,
Make
would
a
you
motion
repeat
to-
your motion?
My motion was to approve it as presented, both items, for discussion.
Do I have a second? Motion dies for lack of second. I have a second motion.
Make a motion to deny the variance as presented for discussion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, discussion. Ms. Waterman, we'll start with you.
Not seeing the layout, of the hotel, the different possibilities. Comes to mind raised hotels, additional parking underneath or something. It just seems like there ought to be a way to compromise the number of rooms to the number of parking.
I think, if I may.
Sure.
I think even the first letter in our packet of objection makes a reasonable suggestion right there. If you reduce, and this is probably close, it may not be completely accurate, but if you reduce the number of rooms by 2 on each floor, you can accomplish or meet the parking requirement, and you still wind up with reducing the number. Well, it says from 93 to 85. I know they're shooting for 103. I think it's a little awkward to ask for a variance for hardship prior to any hard design or real evaluation to it. It's a real challenge here to the board, but I think staff has probably spent hours and days, weeks into this, and for us to make a decision contrary to their recommendation at this point in a short period of time may not be judicious on our part.
All the time.
Well, okay. But if they've been working on this for a year, and it does have to come back to us for final approval on the development order, puts a lot of responsibility on us that I don't think we have the background and full understanding.
You don't trust their feasibility study that says they need 103 rooms to be able to get a brand name? You don't trust their feasibility study?
I agree with Ms. Waterman that I think there could be alternatives to this.
Is that it?
Well, I also think we have, in the event of near 100% occupancy, there would be a problem there, and I think parking in this area in South Walton County in general is a problem or an issue. To reduce it by 19% from the requirement is significant.
So don't assume that you're not for the variance.
Yes.
Charlie, what do you think?
I agree with Mr. Burgess in a lot of ways. Parking in the south end is just brutal. There's nowhere to park ever. Reducing it beyond 1-to-1 is hard to justify. I can see the trend, as they were talking about, though, where people are starting to travel more in larger cars and larger groups, using bicycles, alternate means of transportation and such. But still, even then, a few extra parking spots, which certainly wouldn't hurt. I mean, there's just a lot of parking problems in the whole south end down there anywhere. I think some days, spring break, various times are going to be worse than others, where you're going to have an overflow and those people are going to be trying to park somewhere, and they always park on the curbs in the grass and somebody else's parking spot and in their driveways. There's a lot of residential houses down there, where people are going to park, get out, leave their car, and not worry about it. I would.
Okay.
Yeah.
You done?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did some math based on what Matt Carpenter was saying about occupancy rates, about 94% for the month of June. And if the required number of parking spaces is 116, or I'm sorry, was it 113, and you did 94% on that, you'd land around 106 6 parking spaces required. So I think Charlie made a suggestion that at a minimum, it should be a 1-to-1 ratio. And I think that's actually a reasonable adjustment for their pro forma. If we were to grant them a variance for a 1.0 parking ratio per room, that they would still need to reduce the number of rooms in the hotel because they're not gaining any parking on the site. That I think they have 91 spaces on the site, so they would need to reduce the number of rooms in the hotel to 91 rooms, but that we could give them the variance on the one parking island landscape so that they could get to the 91, and then they'd have a 1-to-1 ratio. And I don't know, 103 rooms just seems awfully arbitrary, and I don't know that would prevent somebody from wanting to operate a 91-room hotel there. So I think we use the math that we were given and say that 91 rooms appropriate for 91 spaces instead of applying the 1.1.
What? The way you went around the moon. Okay. Now,
They were asking
we got to listen.
They asked for a reduction
Just
from
hang on a
1.1 to 0.9, I think.
Hang on a minute. We have a motion to deny it. We have a second to deny it. Your discussion, maybe not deny it, but to allow 91 spaces for 91 rooms, do 1-to-1.
I would
But they
amend.
didn't ask that.
I was going to say if it was possible to amend the motion to compromise and give them some additional parking.
So they said they didn't know if they could do that because they haven't done the feasibility.
They would leave with something. They have a site where they've maximized every square inch of parking with 91 spaces. So I think it's reasonable to say you could operate a 91-room hotel with 91 spaces.
Well, the thing about it is, they've been working on this for a year or 2 years. We could take to do this, they could use it, not use it. They could speed up with it, or well, now Jeff says if we're going to, his consideration is to go from 1.1 to 1, so if you go from 1.1 to 1, your spaces will be deleted.
We're not deleting any spaces. We're forcing them to build a small hotel.
What I said was, you willing to do the 91 spaces, which would be 91 rooms, right? Which would be a reduction from the 1.1.
12 rooms.
12 cars, 12. If you take 1.1 for 91 rooms, how many parking spaces? It'd be 1/10, so it'd be about 100.
You're saying if you had 91 rooms at
Code
100.
says you gotta have 1.1.
100.1. So they should have had 100.1 spaces.
So what he's proposing in his discussion is to cut 10 spaces off.
From the requirement.
From the requirement. You're saying that you don't need to cut none off.
Well,
I'm not leaving with 91 parking.
Pardon me?
Right. At a 1.1 requirement and they have 91 spaces, that only allows them an 82 room. The difference is significant in number of rooms.
20%.
Big swing.
20%.
So I'm splitting the difference.
10%, not 20%.
Based on some math that we heard from Mac, that they made the argument that this hotel would never have.
They need to get a Hampton Inn, because they fill up everywhere I go. If you don't get there by 3 o'clock, make the reservation, you can. And that's from here to there, so.
And this is Town Place Suites by Marriott.
Pretty nice suite. They got some,
You could always relabel some of the rooms a study, which is what a lot of people do.
All right, we have a motion to deny, we have a second. In my opinion, they need 120 rooms, they need, 120 spaces, but I still think that a landowner has the right to do what he wants to do with his property.
I'd be willing.
I hate to cut him down to, 91 rooms, but I'd rather for him to leave, here something. So if Mr. Burgess would like to, we can do this two ways. We can vote on it, or Mr. Burgess can rescind his motion and make another motion.
I think it was my motion.
Charlie's motion.
Your motion.
Yes, sir. I'd be willing to amend my motion to approve the variance.
Well, you can't amend a denial.
All right.
I think you need to
Vote on it.
rescind the motion and make a new motion. Is that right? Because you really can't amend a denial, right?
Okay.
Hayward, because he wouldn't know the difference, but you and
All right.
Kessler's talking about, right?
I'll repeal my motion to deny.
And you second it, so you,
I second the repeal.
all in favor, aye. All right,
Aye.
we got that done. Now, how about a motion?
Let Jeff
Do
do
it,
it.
you want Jeff to do it? Or you want Ms. Water? Jeff, make the motion.
I would like to make a motion to approve a variance of using a parking ratio of 1 space per room in the hotel, which would
And allow the island spaces.
I think we need to do with islands altogether. To me, it's more important how it's spacing, because you're not gonna see
Couple of shrubs.
vegetation whenever you got 91 rooms with 91 cars. Why don't we just do away with both islands? Okay,
I like the parking
Depends if they're
design
gonna
as
allow
submitted.
pets.
so we need a motion.
It's yours.
Get a second
Second.
discussion.
Your motion does not allow for the removal of, or the spacing to go from 10 to 15. You're just cutting it off at 10 then, before you put an island.
You need to address both items, item 1 and item 2.
My motion is to approve the parking as submitted with 91 spaces and 15 car gaps without a landscape island. Parking ratio for the hotel from 1.1 to 1.
Okay.
So if they decide to do 80 parking spaces, they could have an 80-room hotel.
I'll second that.
Why don't you want to do away with the other landscape island?
Good.
Both of them, just one of them.
Well, I think you need that one there.
Any other discussion? Mr. Waterman? Mr.
I'm good.
Harley?
I'm okay.
Have a motion, have a second. All in favor, aye? Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay? Who else voted nay?
Buddy.
5-1. Y'all want to come up? Y'all the last ones here. Do you understand what we did? We did not want to send you away from here with nothing. But we would not have approved the reduction to 19%. So we did approve the one ratio, which you can build a 91 hotel and have 91 rooms. And we did take out that, instead of 10, you got to 15. Are you good with that? I mean, that's all you got. You can live with it or not, because you wasn't gonna get the other. So are you happy with what we did?
I really have to evaluate the numbers. That's what it comes down to.
Would you rather for us to not done anything, just said no and send you out the door, or is this something you can work with?
We're gonna try to work with it. I would have loved to get the 103. That's where I really needed to be.
I think you'd be better at 91 at 100% than 103 at 80. So people gonna get on Facebook and say, don't go there, there's no parking, my dog got ran over, or something like that, turning around. Yeah. No, we try to give you something. We try to be fair, and we'll get to see you again, so we hope that it works, and we hope that, hopefully you're happy that we did what we did.
We can do our best to try to make it work.
Well, good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other business? That's the last one, right? How about the minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, aye? Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Favor, aye?
Aye.
It is a pleasure to have you here. I hope that you come back regularly.
Goodbye.
Or people opposed to this one. Also, there weren't a lot of letters in opposition. Most of this package is
Come back to see us.
I will.
Tell Hayward he wasn't missed.
I'll look into property, but I don't think you can do anything without it coming before you, but I'll check it.
Do what now?
White Cliffs.
Oh, yeah. It'll be